Hopefully you're having a fantastic day, and today we're going to be talking about hail. But what is hail? Have you ever seen hail before? Well, all hail is just ice. The ice that you get out of your freezer. But this ice forms in the middle of a thunderstorm, thousands and thousands of feet up. And depending on how strong that warm and moist air rises up, well, the larger that hailstone can be. Whenever we have a severe thunderstorm warning, that means that hail in that storm can be upwards to 1 inch in diameter. That's about the size of a quarter, but it can be a little bit larger than that. It's not uncommon for it to be 1.75 inches in diameter. That's about the size of a golf ball. And if it's the size of a baseball, it can fall upwards to 100 miles per hour. What about the largest hailstone ever? Well, that happened in 2010 in Vivian, South Dakota, and was 8 inches in diameter. That's about the size of this volleyball. Now, it was a little bit thinner, didn't have quite the round look as this is, but it was also a lot heavier than a volleyball, up to 2 pounds. Now, hail causes up to $1 billion in damage every year across the United States, mainly to crops and different plants. It's not something you want to be caught in. So let's learn a little bit more about hail. So even though South Dakota has the record-breaking hailstone, this is where most of the hail occurs across the United States. This is Hail Alley. Anywhere from Wyoming to Colorado to Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas typically has the most hail days per year. Even though South Dakota isn't in this polygon, they still are in the top 10 for most hail days in the United States. And sometimes, like back in 2017, North Carolina was number 9 for the most incidents of hail. Here's the hail size chart. As we were mentioning off the top, a quarter size means that it is a severe hailstone, but it can be as much as 2.5 inches in diameter. That would be like a tennis ball. And as I was mentioning, that baseball, that's 2.75 inches. We like to compare hail size to basic objects to really make an easy comparison. So hail develops, as I mentioned, by those stronger upper level winds. That's called the updraft. And then eventually, that hail is quickly going to be falling down. Some other sizes, whenever it's pea size, that hail is falling to the ground at 45 miles per hour. When it's roughly the size of a nickel, that's about 55 miles per hour. Golf balls, I showed you at the top of this video, 85 miles per hour. That's how quickly it's falling to the surface. And usually when you have golf ball size hail, you want to make sure that car is going to be in the garage. So how does hail form? Well, it's all dependent on an updraft. An updraft is going to be that vertical ascent of that warm, rising, moist air. But that can pick up speed, and it can move faster and faster. And once a tiny bit of ice continues to rise, melt, freeze, melt, freeze, melt, it gets larger and larger. And that updraft can support that hailstone. But after a while, that hailstone's going to get way too heavy, and eventually it falls. So let's learn a little bit more. So as I was mentioning, that hailstone is going to go up and down the atmosphere. But it all starts as a tiny water droplet, well above our heads, over 2-3 miles. This is going to be what's called the freezing line. This freezing line is going to take that tiny little water droplet and rise it and fall, rise and fall. It's going to freeze and unfreeze, freeze and unfreeze. And that's all supported by the updraft, that strong wind that's blasting in the upper parts of that thunderstorm. But if you cut a hailstone open, it actually looks like the center of a tree. That's from that constant melting and freezing of that hailstone. So the stronger the updraft is, well, the stronger that hailstone is going to be supported, and also the larger that hailstone is going to be. But no matter how strong that updraft is, there's always a point that hailstone eventually is going to fall. So hail is mainly going to be more of a risked property rather than yourself, but it's nothing you want to be outside during. So whenever you hear thunder, when thunder roars, get indoors. Any thunderstorm can produce hail, damaging winds, and even tornadoes, and on top of that, dangerous lightning. Get indoors. Wait 30 minutes until the last roar of thunder is heard. I'm meteorologist Chris Mulcahy.